Hey, here we are again. It's Lori and Lawrence back on the Flat Earth Conspiracy Channel. And we've got a couple of new topics to talk about and some ongoing ones. You can tell by the title of the video that we're going to talk about simulation theory, Mandela effect, flat Earth, how it all relates, how it cross-connects, interconnects. So we're going to start off immediately with Lawrence showing you some whether you want to call them Mandela effects or just changes, which is what we've gotten kind of used to calling them now, is just this has changed and that has changed and so on. So, hi, Lawrence, and go for it.
Hello. Yeah. Okay. Well, most of the Mandela effects that have been out, certainly in the early days, they were like, the name of something's changed, the letters changed, a dash has changed, an apostrophe has changed. Or the words were changed in the movie or like that. But now, what we have are real physical changes, and actually in the fabric of the Earth with the maps. So that's one of the ones we're going to cover. Aircraft. Now, I've got residual evidence that, well, obviously what's in my own mind knows that they were changed anyway. So the changes to the jet aircraft, body parts. It may well be that, I'll cover it in more detail, but that everybody's kidneys have been moved up a bit or quite a bit. And then I've got a range of little one-offs that we can look at, and also the maps, where it appears that, South America has been moved about 1,800 miles to the east, which sounds incredible. We've also got Gibraltar, which has been moved, and it's got this crazy airport now. But we'll start off with the aeroplanes, because this is the one. I mean, I used to go plane spotting when I was 10 years old. I used to get on my bike and ride about 10 miles to the airport and watch the planes coming in. And I've had, in my time, I've had countless scores of flights. I always like a window seat so I can have a look and see what's happening, with the flaps and the engines and what's going on outside. So let's start off with the aircraft. So back to a little screen share again. Okay. That one. Right, here we go. So, jumbo jet. Okay. Now I'm going to wind this on to the end. This is a digital drawing of the jumbo jet. Okay. This is what we'll end up with. I'll move it to the end and you can see the finished article. There you go. There we go. There we go. Sorry. Where's it gone? A bit more. Okay, so there you've got the jumbo jet, and as you can see, the engines are virtually entirely under the wings. But you can also look at how to draw a jumbo jet on some later videos. That's from YouTube, and you've got the one sticking out the front. So let's take a look at the first ever jumbo jet that was made. This is at a museum in the States somewhere, Everett.
Hi, my name is Paul, and welcome to my brief.
So I'll just wait till we get a good side profile of the engines. There you go. I'm trying to stop it.
But before we head inside, some background information.
It's not letting me stop. Just a minute.
Hi, my name is Paul, and welcome to my brief tour.
I'm just very pan around. There. Okay. So this is the first ever jumbo jet. Now look at the engines on that. There's the wing, probably 80 to 90%, if you ignore this little cone on the end, is forward of the wings. That's the first one. And obviously the ones that are made now have got this profile. So how can they both be, a jumbo jet with different engines? It's impossible, unless somebody's physically changed all the jumbo jets that exist. Okay, so that's that particular jumbo jet. If you watch the movie Airplane, there's that one gone. 737. The rest of it there. There we go. Here we go. In the airplane, so you can see this, we've got South Pacific Airlines. That's a modern plane. That's an older one, but look, you know, this is sometime after the first one was made. But as you can see, the engines, this is from Airplane, the movie, the engines are under the wings, and that's how I remember them. I know that's how they were. But in reality now, the realities have been changed so that they're all in front of the engine. So, and it's getting absolutely crazy. What I've got here is just beyond belief. This is a short video of a military plane, a cargo carrying plane that carries tanks and helicopters and the like. Just look at this plane. You know, these are supposed to be clumsy planes, big fat, you know, cargo carriers. You know, so that's this cargo carrying plane has done a loop to loop. So based on that, all your commercial, you know, passenger planes would probably be able to do the same. Yeah, let's come out of that. Okay, and what else have we got in there on the aircraft? Oh yes, more details on that. So this is the A400. So you can this is the inside of the plane doing the loop to loop. So there you can see they've got the big American Jeeps on there. This is loading a truck onto one of those planes. A little tank. You know, this is the plane. Loop the loops. Now those planes could never do loop the loops. You know, they would just smash to pieces. So I've got a lot more evidence on this is another one on how to draw a 747. Showing you that one. And there are other ones doing drawings for 747. So I ain't going to go into all of them. You've seen enough to see that what we have is a nonsense. So where have you gone now? So, you know, where have you gone? Laurie?
I'm here.
Oh, right. I can't see you. I've stopped sharing, haven't I?
Yeah.
All right. Well, I can't see
I
you.
just turned my camera off because you were screen sharing.
So yeah, so the aircraft changes are conclusive. I've gone back and seen footage in the 1950s where they got the engines in front of the wings, and of course even the what's that big bomber plane that the Americans have, the B-52 bombers with the jet engines. The engines have moved forward on that as well. And you know, a plane is meant to be, you know, out there to bomb the enemy. So you know, if the people they're bombing have got any, you know, anti-aircraft missiles or whatever, then with the engines in front of the wings, that the surface area will be increased and they'd be a bigger target. So it's a complete nonsense to have a military plane that you know, that's got more chance of being knocked down. You know, the people in charge of design would be sent back to the table and say, look, put the engines under the wings, but they haven't. And they didn't. You know, when they originally designed, they were under the wings, but now they're in front of the wings. And that's the case for virtually every jet plane now, but it was never the case. And they've also got these things called winglets. So I noticed that quite a few years back, but they've taken it back to the 80s. That's where the tips of the wings, they come up at the edges like that, and that's a new design. And the engines have got fins on now, which they didn't previously. Obviously, with the engines being further forward than they were, it's going to affect the balance of the plane, and they're going to need more lift. So not only have they got flaps at the back to help them lift up, they've got something called slats, which are flaps on the front of the wing. So that's a new addition to the planes as well. So, you know, the evidence for me is 100% conclusive that they've been physically changed now. And and in all the planes that were ever made, including all those in the graveyards in the whatever desert in the Mojave Desert in America. They've got rows and rows of jet planes that have been there for a long time, but they've all got the engines in front instead of under the wings. So how could you do that? You could only do that if we're code, and the code's been changed, which has changed every last one. If you look in the books, the pictures of planes, Google images, they're all showing engines in front of the wings. The only residual evidence is that airplane movie and the how to draw the plane. And obviously, there is residual evidence that we've all got in our own minds. If you're a regular flyer, you can know the engines used to be under the wings, and they've moved them forward and backdated it till when the planes were first made. I mean, how would you explain that?
Well, my question would be to define the difference between obviously prop engines and jet engines. I can totally understand where the props need to be in front of the wings, or at least below far enough that when the props are turning, they wouldn't hit the wings. So that only makes sense. But you're talking about jet engines. You're not just talking about design changes over the years. You're talking about the way they used to be and the way they are now, only they're the same planes and they're the same engines, is what you're saying. You're not saying, yeah, they've changed the design of airplanes, because, I watched the movie The Aviator that was about Howard Hughes and Hughes Aircraft and all the different designs that he made over time. And, he sold a lot of airplanes to the government, to the military. And so I'm going to have to go back and look at that movie and see how they have the engines on the planes that they showed in the movie, but it's it's recent, but it's not that recent of a movie. But I guess what I'm trying to make sure that you're saying is these are not design changes. These are actual changes to what used to be.
Yeah, if the first jumbo jet has got virtually all the engine in front of the wings, and the jumbo jet today has got the engine completely in front of the wings, then anything in between should have the engines in front of the wings. But right. I know that's not the case, and I've got the residual evidence to show that they were under the wings. So they have changed. The thing you've got to think here is, well, all right, so they've changed the code. We're just code. They changed the code, changed the planes, but they would also have had to get inside the minds of every airline pilot, because one day, probably in the past 5 years, this happened. Sometime after 2013 is my best guess, looking at some of the how to draw them. So the pilot turns up for work the next day, and he's got the very same plane he probably flew out the day before, because pilots tend to stick with the same model of plane because that's what they experienced in flying. So he's turning up one day, and the plane's completely different, but he doesn't notice. So they've had to change his visual perception of what the plane should like from what it was to what it is. The plane is also going to be different for flying, because the plane's going to be differently balanced, and he's got the slats at the front, so there'll be controls somewhere. I know it's all mostly done by computer, but they've got the slats at the front of the wings, so we'd have to know how to work those. The switch gear on the plane's going to be different because the plane's been redesigned. So his mind will have had to been programmed. Do you remember a program called Joe 90?
No.
It was a program in the UK where this kid went into this machine, and his brain was programmed so he could fly a jet plane or acquire a skill. So these pilots have had their brains reprogrammed so that they can fly the plane with the new configuration, and B, to wipe out their residual knowledge of what the plane used to be. So for them, it's just business as usual. The same would have happened with all the flight attendants, all the maintenance staff, on on the ground at the airport. Anybody who's coming into contact with the planes, the baggage handlers, the people who work inside the airport, or who are looking out the windows, the restaurants and stuff. Anybody connected to the airport who's seen these planes on a regular basis, they're going to all get reprogrammed.
Okay. Well, let me stop you there.
Yeah.
What about passengers? What about people who work inside the airport, who look out the windows and have a memory yesterday of planes just looking out and go, something about this is different, but I don't really know what it is. You'd have to reprogram a hell of a lot of minds and memories to pull that off, I guess you'd call it. And it isn't just the memories of those who are directly associated with the plane, flying it, pilots, so on. Okay. So how do you do that? How do you change that many minds? How do you erase that much memory? Well, the best way I could explain it, if all of this is true and all of this did occur, okay, you know how when you're sitting there doing something on your computer and all of a sudden, if you have not turned off automatic updates, your computer just starts updating, okay? I mean, you might be watching a video or whatever, and all of a sudden everything slows down and dragging along, and you're like, what the hell's going on? And then you click on your back screen and or you look down at the bottom and you see the icon for the updates has started updating. Okay. Now, I, for example, have my updates to where I choose which updates to get, and they don't automatically just update because I don't have Windows 10. I won't get Windows 10. And there's a whole lot of updates that I don't want in my computer because it's going to mess up the configuration of what I use it for. So, but many people don't have that, haven't found that option, so on and so forth. So the reason why I bring up updates is if we as code programmed matrix dwellers have no authority or control over updates. Well, let's just say the updates that everyone got that are, everyone, not just pilots, not just, maintenance workers, blah, blah. Everyone, when they uploaded when got their updates uploaded, that was one of the changes that happened with everyone.
Exchange.
Right? I mean, does that follow? Does that follow for you to okay, so what happened that you remember? That's the part that you have to question what's going on, that you remember the difference and all these other people don't. And that is a big consistency with the Mandela effect across the board. Those who do not remember a different thing are no matter what you say to them, they're not going to remember it because that code's gone. That programming's gone. It's different now. And those who do remember magic mirror on the wall versus mirror on the wall, which is one of the most prevalent ones. Okay. I remember mirror. There's other people who say, oh, I remember magic mirror. Or those who say, I don't have a dog in this fight. I don't remember. I don't remember it either way. It wasn't important, obviously. So, okay, that's one thing. But the residual part is where you go in and turn on the movie and you're waiting for the evil witch or whatever the hell she was, say magic or mirror on the wall. And then she says magic mirror and you go, what? That sound in your head. Okay. Well, it's the same thing you're feeling with regards to these airplane engines.
So, as you mentioned that one, Laurie, the Snow White one, I haven't got any saved on my system, but there's residual evidence for it to be mirror because people have got old children's books of Snow White, and it's got mirror in that. So, well, I know it's mirror. Magic mirror was never the case because I watched that when I was a kid, I watched it many times, so I remember it.
Well, and then they also say that the book that was written by Grimm had Mirror, but when Disney took it over and made it into a film, they changed it to Magic Mirror. So there's going to be an argument, no matter what you do, from one side or the other, of residual evidence versus no, that's never how it was kind of thing. Okay. This is the problem with the whole concept of the theory of the Mandela effect. If you're looking at it from the point of alternate universes and overlapping universes and timelines and all that stuff, then those two people are never going to agree with somebody who says, no, there's only one timeline, there's only one universe, and the changes were made to the one that we're in. And you didn't come from the Pleiades to plop in here with a different memory. So this is going to be an ongoing argument, no matter what anybody says, until everybody would get on the same bandwagon of saying it's either code or update changes or programming changes, or matrices with submatrices within submatrices, and each one of those has some different programming glitches that are obvious from one to the other.
Most of the people in the YouTube community now are talking about it being, either CERN or multiple universes. But if it was multiple universes, there wouldn't be any residual evidence, because it would always have been there that way. Whereas in this one we're in, which I think is the only one, there's lots of they haven't, as you came up with that description about the dandelions, when the flower and all these little flowers, millions of them blow all over the place.
When they turn into a puffball?
Yeah, so that's all your residual evidence is all sort of out there, and they've swept up as much as they can. But there's a few odd stray ones that are out there, and obviously people who look for them ultimately will find them. So there's quite a bit of residual evidence out there, which proves that that it has to have been changed in this single Earth that we're on.
Sure, but they have it taken care of already with the implementation of you're a crazy conspiracy theorist. That's not the way it ever was. Okay. And as long as people can fall into that trick bag explanation, then, which to me is a blanket excuse for not wanting to get into or understanding or researching what someone's trying to tell you. It just automatically you go into, you're crazy, you're stupid, you don't know what you're talking about, you're one of those conspiracy theorists. And so as long as they can use that, they're safe from having to be confronted with the cognitive dissonance that is associated with anybody who sees things differently than they do, period, across the board. So what else do you have than the planes?
Let's move on to the video phone. That's where you could make a telephone call and see face to face the people you're talking to in real time. That technology has only been widely available, I think, since the iPhone came out. There may have been some very expensive versions available, prior to that, but they weren't widely available. So when did the iPhone came out? About 2004, 2005, maybe around about then, about 13 years ago. But now it's down in the annals of history that video phones, where you can actually see somebody and talk to them at the same time, is going back to 1964. So I'm going to give you a little bit of residual, which shows that was. I know it wasn't the case, because I know you couldn't. If that technology was available then, it would have been in the movies. Especially the James Bond movies and stuff like that. But it was never in any movie. And I used to watch a program in the UK called Tomorrow's World. They did a program about the mobile phone. You know,
Well, it was in a science fiction movie. It was in 2001: A Space Odyssey, the picture phone.
let's just put that one so people can quickly watch
Okay.
that 2-minute clip. Hang on.
Of course, that was what, 1968?
Yeah, let me just get the screen share for that. Have a 2-minute break while we play this. Let me.
You're not screen sharing.
It's I've got a spinny circle going round.
Oh, buffering.
It says it's not responding at the moment, so I'll come out of that. I can't come out of it. Hang on. Right.
Yeah, I did watch the clip of 2001: Space Odyssey and saw, you know, the guy, actually the little girl that the man's talking to is Stanley Kubrick's daughter.
Yeah. Yeah, you carry on for a minute, Laurie, because this thing, I might have to sign back in because it's crashed out on me.
Okay. Okay, so I guess really the bottom line is that, you know, if we're going to talk about changes versus Mandela effect, because Mandela effect and literal changes are two different things. And Mandela effect basically is the idea that certain people remember things one way and then other people remember it another way. And then the advanced Mandela effect is that literal changes were made in existing reality. And that is things like those who say the Bible has changed.
I'm back.
You have two different links up. You didn't get out of your old one, Lawrence.
Oh, right. Okay. No,
You need to close out the other one. So you're going to buffer even worse if you keep them both open.
All right, just a minute.
And so the other part about, you know, Mandela effect versus changes is, you know, changes are where the whole thing's changed from your memory, from everybody's memory. And there is little to no residual left over from the way it used to be. And that's what Lawrence is trying to find, is the residual of plane engines being backwards, for, you know, under the wings versus in front of the wings. And we're not talking about prop engines. We're talking about, you know, jet engines. But also, you know, people are, I mean, if you go look up, go on YouTube and go in the search and look up Mandela effect debunked, you will see, as a matter of fact, one of the things that I noticed immediately was, it used to be when you put in a search term for YouTube, it would show you the search results right at the top, you know, 400 million, 300,000 with those tag words. Okay. Now they don't show you that anymore. So you don't have, unless you have some kind of advanced paid for YouTube, blah, blah, like vidIQ or something, you don't know what that search result turns out immediately. And so when you put in Mandela effect debunked, there's just like pages and pages of debunkers about Mandela effect. And they're all absolutely certain that there is no such thing and that it's a conspiracy theory and can't be proven. So that very same thing happened with flat Earth. And, you know, there's a complete tie-in right there. The fact that immediately when one of these theories comes out and someone starts showing it and showing evidence and showing their theory and showing their experiments and their comparisons and their research, it didn't take any time at all before you have the debunkers coming out with they're crazy conspiracists, these theorists. They don't know what they're talking about. They're stupid, they're cult, they're dumb, whatever. It just all that. And so one of my questions is, who's the Mandela effect debunking guru? Because, you know, everybody knows there's flat earth debunking gurus like Neil deGrasse Tyson and Brian Cox and a few other so-called scientist types. Excuse me. But who's the Mandela effect debunker? You know, guru, gatekeeper? Who's the simulation theory guru, gatekeeper? I mean, obviously, I noticed Neil deGrasse Tyson immediately came out against, you know, laughing at and making fun of the simulation string theory, whatever, from the theoretical physicists who came out with the idea that if you break everything down to the smallest mathematical level, it's all the entire universe is code, ones and zeros. Ones and zeros means off and on. One is on, zero's off. That's like the computer system. Everything's a switch. It's either on or it's off. And that's with all that clicking you hear going on inside of there when you're, you know, doing any kind of computing or changing things. And so, okay, so go ahead. Did you
Okay.
get to it? Okay.
Just flick your hair off your neck. It looks like you've slit your throat. It's going right.
I can't stand that for you. Okay. No throat slitting. Okay, how's that?
The video telephones. Right.
Maybe when you come back and watch this video later, Lawrence, you will find that I did.
Just scat this out.
His wife didn't marry Hamroma. Gondola.
Ah, the video phone. Oops, sorry. Do you have sound?
Yeah, I can turn it up if you want. You normally don't want any sound. Oh, you mean for the
video? That's okay. It doesn't matter what they say to each other, really. It's the idea that it's a video phone.
All right.
In 1968.
Yeah, if you listen to the podcast,
science fiction.
Then you're looking at 2001.
Okay, so the idea is that in 2001 Space Odyssey, made in 1968, they introduced video phones, which was science fiction and was not supposed to be available to everybody at that point, right?
Yeah. So, but this week, this has come to the light this week. That we've had this technology to.
That's still playing in the background. Turn that off.
All right, just a minute. Just a minute. Where's that then?
You must have just closed the window without turning it off.
All right, let's turn that off.
Okay.
So yeah, so we've got what's that gone? You know, the video phone. We've got all these, and there's videos you can watch on it as well. Western Electric is crossing a telephone with a TV set. I think that was from 1970. This one here is called the picture phone. Okay, from the 60s. Vista phone, picture telephone system. This one here is the original. There we are, picture phone, Western Electric in the early 1970s. There's a different model.
Enough models to.
There's the factory, the Western Electric picture phone. That's at the JKL Museum of Telephony. So all these things are now in the museum, and there's a big pile of them where you can actually see different types of video phone from the 1960s and 70s, which never existed prior to this week. But you've got videos about it. The videos have been up apparently since 2012. But if you can change the code for physical objects, then you can change the, you can just put a video in as though it was always there. So I know for a fact that that technology wasn't available. It's it's another another Mandela.
Well, I read recently. Oh, sorry, I got my camera off. I read recently that you know how they always come up with excuses when you catch them at something. The excuse was that was invented, that did happen, but it didn't catch on. Probably because it's too expensive, weren't enough users for it, weren't enough buyers. They probably invented it for more for business use, corporate use, for meetings and things like that. And then it just didn't catch on till later. So that's how they cover for all this kind of stuff. Is they say, well, it actually did exist, and we did make a couple of TV commercials for it, and have a couple of press conferences and show it to the news media.
Everywhere, every national.
But that was a lot of, I might believe that if I only saw one or two models, but you just showed a whole bunch of models that were made. So that means everybody jumped in and made their own model, and it didn't go anywhere. Plus, I was always under the understanding, so if someone knows more than I do or differently than I do with this, then jump in there, and give us some comments. But I was always under the impression that that data is data, and that video didn't stream across normal telephone lines only until they were starting to use fiber optics. Could you stream enough data to stream audio and video together without it being all choppy and messed up and everything? I mean, for crying out loud, look at it today. How many times have you gone on YouTube to watch a video and you sit there and wait for it to load? Or it's same with Netflix. You wait for it to load, and for crying out loud, not only do we have fiber optics, but we have over a half of billion miles of fiber optic cable stretched across oceans and so on, blah, blah. So then add to that the fact that, President Nixon talked to the boys on the moon in real time video. You saw the video that came across from the moon back here that they were supposed to be sending. That was all like crappy and staticky and pixelated looking and everything else. Come on. So which is it going to be? Is it going to be we had technology way before we thought we did, or we didn't? And not only that, but I'm old. So I remember watching the Jetsons as a kid and thinking, wow, how cool it's going to be in the future when we have flying cars and, video phones and robots that clean the house and do the laundry and make the food and all that. And I kept waiting and waiting and waiting, and that didn't happen. Not hardly any of that happened. I mean, no Joe Blow out there has a robot cleaning their house. And unless you want to discount the Roomba, okay, then we'll throw that in there. But my point is it appears to me that they're trying to advance the dates of when technology was introduced to us farther back than it actually did. So in other words, they're trying to stretch out the timeline of the advanced rapid rate that technology has happened in 1 decade, 2 decades, 3 decades. They're trying to go back 4 and 5 decades to say we had stuff that we didn't have then. Why? Why would they do that?
Well, I know Lawrence and Larry, it's a nonsense as well, because if you ever, I haven't watched the most recent Star Treks, but I used to watch the first one all the time when it first came out. And they have their, they would beam them down to some far distant planet, and they would have their communicators, and he would flick it open and he would talk to the ship. Well, there was no photograph of who he was talking to on the ship on there. So if that was the 1970s and it was science fiction, and they still didn't have it, And then when Facebook came out, you couldn't have a face-to-face video call with somebody else on Facebook when it came out. If this stuff had been available in the 1960s, it would have been instantly on Facebook and everything else, but it wasn't. So it's obvious that the timeline is all jumbled up. If the technology was there in the 60s, then it would have been commercially available from the day the internet came out, but it wasn't. That's relatively last few years that we've had that. So,
well, there's a difference, Lawrence, between when it was invented and when it became mainstream. We both know that. Okay, so for example, many of the tech, much of the tech that we have today was invented mostly by the military via DARPA and other science agencies that came, inventors or whatever come up with something, and they go, and DARPA immediately comes in and goes, okay, we're going to fund this because we see a weapons use for it or a defense use for it. So, they take it over and they advance it and they use it for, obviously for, weapons of war. And obviously they're not going to tell everybody about it because that would be national security issues, blah, blah, go on and on. Star Wars was talked about all the way back with President Reagan. And it actually never happened quite that way. But somehow all of a sudden, for years and years, all during the Cold War, any moment your country could be bombed by the Russians and you would have no defense. And, you would, if you were lucky, you would get in a first response before they annihilated your country. Now, suddenly somewhere back there, we've always had this sort of not always, but for a very long time, had this sort of Star Wars tracking system that we would know the minute they started opening their silos or the minute that radiation was detected. It's like, wait, where's that coming from? Who's doing that? This is, very Star Trek-y kind of stuff. Yeah. So yes, I think the whole point of it is to jumble the timeline so that people don't readily remember when something was invented and then what would happen next. What would be the next logical step? The next logical step would say it's always been that way, or we've never had it. So if you want to start erasing history from the back end, you could turn around and say, Erasmus back in, 400 AD invented and you go, what? Where's this coming from? I never heard this. So that's kind of what it feels like to me.
Yeah, I know. I haven't got it in front of me, but I was looking at one today about saying that colour televisions were first came to light in the 1920s. Colour TV. Let me just go through a few little quick ones, because you might not have seen these. We don't have to spend too long on them. Here we go. Other Mandela. Okay, so what about this one? I was looking at this one the other day, and if you look at this map of the world, the Gleason's map of the world became the Beaumont's map of the world.
Can you make that bigger? So you did show me that, and I was mystified how it suddenly became Beaumont's.
Yeah,
there it is.
Yeah, that was a YouTube. Well, I'll tell you what that was.
Full screen. Go to full screen on your share.
It gets a bit blurred, but
it's okay. It's easier to see Beaumont's.
Yeah, at the top. Yeah, but anyway.
Hey, wait, something's sticking out at me. What is that up in the corner? 1 to 6? One. What is that?
Just that number.
That number was different on the last one. And look, it's even got the cute little dog ear over in the top left corner that's always there. Yet they changed the name.
I don't know what's going on with that, but it's just something I noticed. Let me have a look. Some of the others, the kiwi fruit is now the kiwi berry. Well, there's a kiwi berry now, which never previously existed. I've never seen kiwi berries in the shop. The banana is now a berry in the science books, and raspberries and strawberries are no longer berries. The polar bear, there aren't any white polar bears anymore. They've all got this orange tinge on them. So they've changed the polar bears apparently. And then we're getting anomalies like it's coming up. There we are. Square cloud.
Yeah, you showed me the square cloud one. That's a Photoshop. I'm going to throw that one out right off the bat.
Yeah. And I had a look at this map. Now tell me what you see at this map. Just look at, this is where, Russia and America, the closest points.
Bering Strait is wrong.
Just take a look. Just take a look at it. What do you see that I see?
I can see it immediately. The Bering Strait is wrong, and there's only like a few miles between. It's something like 59 miles or something between Russia and Alaska. Yeah. There.
Well, no. Well, what I noticed at this, God knows why I picked on this, was where the two ends meet. It looks like two faces looking at each other. Do you see the faces?
Kinda.
It looks like, some kind of gremlin on the left.
Yeah, somebody just screwed that all up. I've never seen a map that looked like that. That's not even close to the Bering Strait map.
Of course, I suspect that your brain's been reprogrammed on the banana trees, Laurie, because they don't make any sense. So if you go and learn how to draw a banana tree on YouTube, that's how they'll show you how the bananas. So the weight of the banana is obviously pulling it down. And Stargod's touched on this. I think he got it off our channel when I was posting.
I know, and you and I have argued about this one, so we have different programming there too.
Sorry, that's the kidneys.
Bananas have always grown up, not down. The black end of the banana, not the stem, is facing up.
Of how a banana tree grows.
There it is.
It's crazy because that thing that drags things down, which flat ballers would not call as gravity. You would never get fruit growing against gravity like that.
Well, let me explain this to you, Lawrence. Just because I have an explanation for that. When that stem comes out of the plant, it shoots up, not down. The whole stem that's holding the whole group of bananas. Okay.
It does, man. Yeah.
And the bananas grow around in a spiral shape off of that stem. I've lived in Florida almost, I was born here, so bananas grow up that way. When you cut them off the spike, the spike is hacked above the bottom group of bananas. Yeah, but what makes it aim down like that is the weight of it as the bananas start to mature. It pulls it down. So that in effect makes the fruit look like it's growing upside down.
Well, to me, Laurie, it looks like they're defying nature because things would, if you look at any other fruit, you don't get apples growing upside down, do you? Or oranges. They
no, but they're individual pieces of fruit growing on a tree, whereas this is a spike that comes out of the top of the tree and then falls over with weight as the bananas grow. Anybody who wants to argue that with me, do so in the comments because I've watched banana trees. I have them right outside my back door.
Well, they're not even banana trees anymore, Laurie. They're now called the banana plant.
Well, they are. They basically are a plant because they're kind of like almost like a rhizome growing up out of. You can hack down all the banana trees and you didn't get rid of them. They come right back up through the soil.
All right. Well, let's just look at the body. I'm only looking at the kidney. I went into the old bookshop to try and find some old books with full anatomy on. I could only spend an hour in there yesterday, and I couldn't look through enough of them. But apparently, now obviously we can't see where our kidneys are, but if you know anything about boxing, there we go. This is where the kidneys are now. You look at all the mainstream journals, health journals. Trying to make that get bigger. There we go. The kidneys are much higher. They're approximately where your elbows hang down. Whereas in you know, I've had a kidney infection. I know it's much lower down and to the side. It's not there for sure. And there's another model of it. Okay, you look at all the different journals. They're saying the kidneys are actually partially under your ribs now, which is rubbish. They're not, you know, well, they may be now, but they weren't in my day when I had a kidney infection. And I could, you know, it's the small of your back, you know, and most people would agree on that. Let's have a look at
Well, on that, we 100% agree, because I too have had a bad kidney infection, was even hospitalized shortly for it. And it is in your low back to the side bottom, way below your rib cage.
Well, that's where it used to be. You know, if you go to the doctors now,
because I mean, look at the length of those freaking your readers that you'd have to go all the way down.
Look at this one here, because this is very interesting. This is about somebody having a kidney transplant. So this is where they're saying they are now. But if you have a transplant, they move the kidney down to where it used to be. Yeah,
Unbelievable.
that's where it used to be.
My grandmother had a kidney removed and operated on only one kidney for a big part of her adult life. And they did some experimental things. She was in the Philippines when it happened. And they replaced the kidney with tubes. I still, to this day, I was too young to ask enough questions, but couldn't figure out what that was. So I guess they just bypassed it.
Yeah. So, you know, when all the literature say, presumably they would have to.
Yeah, I've never seen the kidneys that high. Is this a modern day book or not text that you're getting that from?
That was all multiple sources. Some of it from official medical stuff. Yeah.
Okay, well, that's not the only thing I've heard moved. I've heard the heart's been moved. It used to be on the left side of your sternum, and now it's closer to behind your sternum in the center. I've also heard the liver is moved and larger than it used to be. So I don't know what the heck is going on. I would have to look at a more recent, you know.
Yeah. If any of you,
book.
any of the, you know, if any of the.
But I was telling you before we came on, I was having a conversation on Facebook with somebody, a Christian person who was making Mandela effect remarks, and said that his understanding was that God was changing our organ placement for the upcoming end of times world battles that we're going to have to make us stronger and more able to survive. And I never heard that one before. I find that extremely curious that Christians would think that, because my natural automatic response to that would be, so are you saying God made him wrong in the first place and put him in the wrong place, and he's correcting the problem now right before end times? I'm sorry, but that doesn't compute in my logic.
Yeah, it's you know, but people.
But hey, you know, what's accounting for somebody else's programming, right?
Yeah. Anyway, so let's just move on to maps. So I found this. It was on a globe that was shown on a Pan Am promotional film, and this is showing where Madagascar used to be. I remember it being there.
Let me interrupt just a second. I know I get charged with this all the time, but blow that up to full screen size so that we don't see all the gobbledygook in your background there.
Okay. I can only. This is on
full window, full screen. There's an icon up at the top to click to that.
All right. Okay.
I'm not talking about within the window. I'm talking there. That's better.
All right. So there you can see the tip of Madagascar. There is just a smidge above, you know, the base of South Africa. You know, it's almost level with it. If it was another 50 miles longer, it would be, you know, the end of Madagascar would be the same latitude as the end of the tip of South Africa. But now, when you look at come out of it, you look at there we are. I think I got that from Google Earth. Look where it is now. You know, it's moved up 500 miles. So the actual fabric of the Earth.
And farther off the coast.
I'm further off the coast, and there we are from Google Earth. again, it's way up, compared to what it was. And then
And what do you think the excuse for that would be? Well, when we stretch our flat maps on the globe, it stretches things out wrong. I don't know. How about the one of South America moving over to within 1,800 miles of Africa
So this is from How to Draw World Maps. So this is where you're going to find residual evidence. Oh, that page is too big. Let's make the page smaller if I can. It's not letting me show. Anyway, yeah, so How to Draw World Maps. Let me make that smaller. All right. Anyway, so if you look where that line is from the tip of South America, it comes up on this one to the left of Greenland, and on the current maps, it comes out way on the other side. I'll have to bring this one up separately because it's not fitting on the screen, but for some reason. So yeah, South America appears to have moved about 1,800 miles to the east, which is crazy. Here we go. So if you look at that one there, that's just to the left, and you look at.
Well, I'm sorry, but I have to bring up that people are going to argue that these are hand-drawn maps and that these are not official maps from any agency.
All right, let's
so show me where it is.
One's a round map. What you can see on that one, it just catches the left of Greenland, and on this one, it's way to the left. And on they're different shapes and that, but the line should still be roughly in the same place when it hits Greenland, and it doesn't.
Look, do you have a UTM map?
I can bring one up
because that's one everyone kind of agrees with. Universal Transverse Mercator. But I noticed suddenly not too long ago. Hold on, just 1 second. Not too long ago, they started talking about laying a cable from Belize to no, was it Belize? Belize to the west coast of Africa. It was only 1,800 miles, and they were going to become new trade partners and so on. It's like you guys just all of a sudden discovered it was only 1,800 miles.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's look at the game of Risk. I think that's an American game, but if you look on this one here, you can see that South America is directly under North America. It's not, way over to the east.
Right. That's how many people remember it growing up.
Look, a different Risk game, a more modern one. They've started to move it over. So you've got some Risk, depending on the old maps. Yeah, the Risk games which you can buy from the 90s.
Look at that. Click on that World Map 1980 one. Wow, look how different that one is. Okay, World Map 1980. There you go.
Yeah, so there you've got the tip of South America. If you draw a line straight up, it's maybe 1,000 miles to the east of more about 2,000 miles to the east of Greenland, and yet on this 2018 map, it's right on the edge of Greenland. So South America, apparently, also Gibraltar. I mean, I've been to Gibraltar, and that's moved about 20 miles to the east, and it's now got an airport on it that cuts directly across the peninsula. So if you want to go to the tourist part of Gibraltar, you've got to drive your car across the runway. It's a complete nonsense. So, if you were going to design an airport, you wouldn't cut off all the traffic to the main point of all the commercial trade. Just a complete nonsense. And that is one of the most dangerous airports in the world now. And it's been, because the runway is only about a mile long, you've got planes crashing over the edge into the sea. There's a couple of planes crashed into the sea.
Yet, Lawrence, when you posted something about that in the Facebook group, Flat Earth Conspiracy Facebook group, one of the members there said she's been there too many, many times, and she remembered there always being an airport. So there's one of those, again, one of those anomalies where you don't remember any airport and she does remember one.
I was there in 2003 on a cruise cruise stopover around the Mediterranean, and it has moved on the map. Before it was like the gates to the west, and they've moved it, and it was a rock that you could see a big black rock as the ship came in, and now it's not even separate from the land. It's just a peninsula. Yet Gibraltar are in an inter-islands games. Well, if they're not an island, why are they in a games for islands? It doesn't make any sense. You know,
you can quit your screen sharing. Let's talk about just that for a second, about things moving around. Okay. Let's say, for example, you go to Google Earth or Google Earth Pro or any of those, and you start searching around and looking for things, and some people come up with things. They find mountains that weren't there, craters that weren't there, craters that should be there that aren't there, tracks across the seafloor, just different things. Well, we all know that Google Earth is a CGI program. It's an application. So it isn't really looking at the Earth, obviously. Number one, because we don't live on a globe. And number two, because there are images that are stitched together to create this globe effect that you can measure things and search around and whatever. You would have to go and take screen captures all the time and archive those, because you go back on Google Earth later and it's like, I never saw this before, or this seems to have moved over here now, or whatever. And if you don't have any residual evidence, then your mind's playing tricks on you, or the new word is misremembering. That must be the politically correct version of, you got it wrong. No, you're just misremembering. And so, what do we take away from this is my question. Why are these changes being made? Who's making them? Are they agreed that they're making them? Or is this happening outside of any of our control? Are there changes being made in the master matrix, the actual construct we live in? And then obviously that would be supernatural changes that have to be made, and that would not be humans doing that. Okay. That would be God, the creator. I don't know how much Satan can do. But to, move a mountain, that's kind of supernatural stuff. That's above human abilities to do overnight. But the submatrix that we're all sort of under, because if we're on the internet and we're using the internet, we don't have any control over what they're doing with the internet and what they're adding and subtracting. Okay. Yeah, now, insofar as your very own memory is concerned, we've all had that thing happen to us where our mind is playing tricks on us, we think, but we can never really be sure. And on top of that, there's times when you have to ask yourself, did I remember that because I had a lucid dream that is playing in my below consciousness? Or did I just misremember it? And so who's doing it? Who has the capacity to change certain levels of this stuff, and at the same time remove the residuals? Like I said, the dandelion flower that turns into the little puff ball, and when you blow it, all the little seeds disperse in every direction. To clean up all the residual, you would have to find every one of those little flyaway seeds, so that none of us, diggers out there would find it. And that is the residual stuff that we are finding. So answer what you think. Who's doing it? Who's capable of doing it? And why?
Well, I think it's the creator who's doing it. It's documented in the Bible. We will see wondrous things. And for those who see these things, they are bloody wondrous. maybe Satan's doing it but God's allowing him to do it. But that's who I think's doing it. I don't believe CERN can, they can shoot a few particles around and move South America 1,800 miles to the east. I couldn't conceive of that would be possible at all. So it's got, it's like everything's code. So yeah, humans can change the text, on any online document. They can change it any way they like, and they can change everything on the internet because it's code. But when you think about it, if the entire earth is a construct, it's all code. The dirt on the street is coded. The rotting leaf in the forest is coded. Everything is just pure code. Then it's just another step up from being able to change data on a computer system, and everybody who has access to it, to changing the fabric of the earth, which is another set of code. It just doesn't happen to be on the internet. So who could change that? It has to be the creator. Nobody else but the creator can change the fabric of the earth.
Okay, so by definition, in my way of looking at it, okay, you've got the matrix would draw the little equal sign to the earth construct, or even if you want to just call it the universe construct. Okay, so we're just going to change the word matrix to construct, or construct to matrix. Now, that is everything that we define as alive, biological, the air, the water, the land, the sun, the moon, the stars, the placement of things, the birds singing, all of the creation, okay? In modern day. That's the biological construct. Then you have all of the energy that occupies the construct entities. And shout out to Philippe, who compared the number of stars in the sky and as being energy beings to the number of energy beings on the planet or on the plane, as above, so below. If you look at it from that perspective, then you take all of the entities, the energy that animates all the people, all the plants, all the animals, everything living, okay? Not dirt, not rocks, not whatever, although there would be people that would argue that they're alive too. So when you look at the construct as the matrix, then the submatrix is our individual realities, okay? Because none of us are unaffected by our surroundings. None of us can be. I mean, even if you're in solitary confinement in a prison, somebody's going to interact with you somehow, even if it's just to bring you food. So, all of our realities are individually different just by enough code to make us different. Okay. Then you take in that's the general reality that we all agree on. But then you add layers of submatrices, matrices that control cultures and religions and what people do for a living and the education system and so on. Those are all submatrices within the submatrix. So you got now 3 levels down. We don't know how many levels of control of information that we're subject to. Try for even a moment to imagine your brain, your memory completely empty. Empty it out. It's almost painful to do so because you cannot. I mean, no matter how hard you try, you can't disremember everything. So when those of us who are walking around saying, oh man, they are woke, or, why don't you people wake up? There is no such thing, because you could argue till the cows come home about what you think is reality to someone else, and this is what I said before we got started. One of the big questions that everybody asks who looks into these different conspiracies and sees the evidence and really looks into it and really experiments and researches comes out of it with, how can all these other people not see this? It's so obvious. It's so like on the nose on your face. Their code will not allow them to. No matter what you show them, no matter how much evidence you give them, they do not have the I see it code. Okay. And when people say, is everybody in on it? This flat earth thing, is everybody in on it? This NASA didn't land on the moon thing, are all those people in on it? Hell yes, they're all in on it, only because it's not a conscious thing. It's a code thing. They wouldn't know that they've been being zoomed for their life. Even if you took them and captured them and kidnapped them and took them in, what do they call that? Deprogramming of cult members, or intervention of drug users, or whatever these words are. You could try to debrainwash, deprogram, whatever, and I think it would be nearly impossible to completely remove the programming or add new. You don't have the capacity to do that. So is everybody in on it? Hell yes, they're all in on it. Are they in on it by choice? Are they in it by consciousness? No, of course not. They're just reacting to their code, to their reality. Go back to the Matrix movie. Freeze the program. All these people stop moving. Okay, those people are all in the Matrix, right? But suddenly, Neo and Morpheus can stand there and talk and watch things going on, and suddenly the agents can come in and start, interacting or whatever. It's all different levels of code. So did they explain it exactly right? No, not exactly right, but enough to give you the clues that you should investigate in your mind how this could be possible and how this could be probably the way things are.
Laurie, now I just want to cover a brief point and then move on to something that you've talked.
Okay, we're gonna take a break anyway and start a new video for another topic. So if it's something outside of this Mandela effect connection, then
no, it's not. No.
Okay.
It only takes a minute. Well, it's like, in a construct, then everything's code. Most of this earth that we're on is made of water, and we know water has intelligence. It can respond to stimuli, words, music, its environment. So water, most of the earth is water. That's got intelligence. And if you've ever read the Ringing Cedars book, Anastasia books, what she would do in that book, if she was going to plant some tomatoes, she'd put the seeds in her mouth so the seeds could, find out what nutrients she wanted. And then when she would plant the seed, she would plant them in the earth, and then she would pour water. She was standing her bare feet and she'd pour water over them so that the soil and the seeds can interpret what nutrients are going to be best for the seed to absorb to grow into the fruit that's going to be most beneficial for her body. So for me, everything is code, even stuff that's, you might think it's a rock or a bit of soil, it's all code. Which brings me on to, we might cover this in part 2. I was saying, when I actually go and walk into the town, if I go and walk into the forest or out, by the beach, it's all peaceful and I'm all relaxed. When I walk into the city or the town, I feel my chest feels tight. I feel stressed. It's like I'm just absorbing all this negative energy around me. But the people, they're like extras. In the movie, the people who just do a walk on part, they're not the main players. And you mentioned the term drones today. Now I'm coming to the conclusion that at least 90% of the people on this earth are actually drones, and they've got this lower level of coding than everybody else has got, and they're just here to make up the numbers. So if you want to talk about the drones now, or later.
Let me try to redefine that a little bit. because I don't want anybody to think that I think that these people are drones. They're drones to you, and they're drones to me, the ones we're talking about, but they're not drones to themselves. They have their own reality and their own life, and things are going on. Okay. I think on a basic level, all of us are born with the same code as far as, capacity to learn and, intelligence level and so on. Okay. But think of it more like those are GMOs to you. They provide you no energy. Okay. Just like you were describing the seeds in Ringing Cedars on the Anastasia book. She was trying to best get the interaction between her and the plants, her and the seeds, for mutual benefit. Okay. Because she's not going to eat the plant. She's going to eat the fruit. But think of it this way. Look at all the GMOs out there. It's the total opposite of what you just described. There's no nutrients in there for you. You're not going to benefit anything out of it. You're probably just going to either get fat or eating it, or it's just going to go on through with hardly any nutritional value. That's what GMOs mean to me. To a lot of people, they think GMOs mean, dangerous, bad for you, so on. And it very well may be. But dangerous and bad for you is really equivalent to just eating empty calories, empty food. Okay. So those people out there, if you want to use the word drones, or if you want to use, equate them to GMOs, there's no value, no nutritional, energetic value between them and you. Yeah, they're everywhere. Okay. Anytime you get around larger masses of people, because your code is not written to interface with their code. And so they're basically just in your way. And they're basically just soaking up whatever energy is out there, because I think there's only so much. So they're sucking up some, and you're trying to suck up some. And that's the difference between introverts and extroverts in a nutshell. But yeah, we'll make sure to define that we're not acting superior to these other people, because they have a purpose here too, and they have their own code and their own lives. But to us, they're drones. They're just the people walking around in the crowd, because we're not going to interact with them. Yeah, we're actually fighting for available energy from them.
So when people in the truth community say, "Yeah, if we get everybody on board on this, we can make a difference," but you're never going to do it, because most people are programmed not to get on with it. And when the Illuminati, they always tell the truth somewhere, because they're compelled to tell you what they're going to do to you if they're going to do it. It's just part of their rules. So when they use the term useless eaters, they are correct, because there is such a high percentage of the population that are not very bright. And these type of people will do the same things week in, week out. There is no variation to their routine. So in terms of code, they're not going to use much code up.
Well, consider who's making them not very bright. They are. They're the ones that are, putting chemicals in everything, and fluoride and chemtrail spraying and all the crap they spray on all the food and give to all the animals that are being raised for food, and so on and so on. By the time you add all that up, they're acting like we don't care because you're useless eaters to us. Okay. To me, I look at it as if they are have a soul inhabited in there somewhere, then, they're important for some reason, for them, for God, for the earth, for something. Okay. There's a spirit, there's a soul inhabiting that person. If there's not, I don't have any way of knowing that. I don't have any, magic soul detector inside me that goes, oh, that truly is a drone over there, or that's a clone, or that. I don't have that. I don't know how many of us have that, but I don't have that.
Well, I'm thinking these are humans, they're in the human shape, but they have no soul.
Well, that's highly possible. Although, um, I never did get 100% delved into the clone thing, or are they out there making humans somewhere in a factory? How did we all of a sudden get to be 7 billion when, we've got millions wiped out by diseases, wars, pestilence, blah, blah. So to me, it always has seemed like as many die as are being born. Maybe that's why they made such a big deal about the baby boomer movement, time in history, because maybe that's just bullshit code too. And there weren't any more of us than there were the generation before us or the generation after. I don't know. But, here's the problem. Trying to know what the truth is, when you hear the term question everything, that literally means everything, not just the things that other people are questioning. I mean, it means everything. Is that tree real? Is that car real? Is that, did World War II happen the way they said it did? Was the world flooded, truly flooded? And, everything. Once you become sort of a questioner, and I'm not talking about a conspiracy theorist, I'm talking about a questioner. I've always been that way since I was wee high to a hoppy toad. And when somebody said something that my gut said, parents, teachers, grandparents, didn't matter who, neighbor, somebody said something that didn't register right in my gut, I had a little signal that went off that went, bullshit. Ask questions. That's what, when we started going around, ask more questions, find more information. Something's not adding up here. Or the big why. I mean, how many little kids do you know who constantly go, but why, mommy? But why, daddy? I was one of those. I mean, I probably drove my parents completely insane, and they probably just stopped listening. But so this goes on my whole life. And as I question more things, that makes me question more things, because everything is inextricably tied to everything else. So all of us have times when we go, well, you know what, I'm just going to not worry about that one anymore. That one's not really important to the big scheme of things. But when flat Earth came along, for example, well, that's kind of important. What do we live on? And so maybe airplanes changing isn't as important to me as it is to you, because it was something you were interested in. But I'll give you one. It was important to me when I found out the color wheel changed and the names of primary colors versus secondary colors versus tertiary colors. I learned all of this in school. Primary colors are what, Lawrence? What are the three primary colors?
Now you're going to get me at red.
These are the three colors that cannot be broken down to any more colors. They make other colors.
Red, yellow, and green.
Red, yellow, and blue.
Blue. All right. Okay.
Okay, those are the primary colors. Do you remember ever hearing the prism colors, the colors of the prism, and how and the little, what do they call that when you put little letters in there to Roy G. Biv.
Yeah,
Roy G. Biv. Red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet. That's Roy G. Biv. Okay. Those are the tertiary colors. Those are the colors that you take red and yellow, Roy, red and yellow. What's in the middle? Orange. Okay. It takes red and yellow to make orange. Yellow and what makes green? Blue. Okay. So there's a reason why they're in the order, because you take these two to make the one in between it. You take these two to make the one in between that. And the more of the secondary and tertiary colors you mix together, then you get a huge spectrum of colors. But what happens when you mix them all together? What do you get? When you mix all the three primary colors together, red, yellow, and blue, what do you get?
Brown?
Mud.
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 Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so when I just was looking at some Mandela effect thing, and the primary colors are orange, green, and violet, I'm like, no, they're not. They never could be. Any color that can't be broken down to its basis color, the most pure form, is not a primary color. So, you know, there's one of those things that agitated me as much as airplane engines agitated you, because I know it isn't a memory thing. It's scientific fact. There's no purer color than red. There's no purer color than yellow, and there's no purer color than blue. So anybody wants to argue that, go ahead, come up with whatever the reasoning is. So each one of us has our Mandela effect thing. Mirror, mirror on the wall got me started. I mean, that bugged the crap out of me. I went and looked up the old movie, and sure enough, she said magic mirror. And I'm like, what? That can't be. Okay, they changed it. Well, then there's people who will argue they didn't change the book, they changed the movie. You read the book first, and that was the imprint that you got, and then you watched the movie. Well, no, you're wrong. I didn't read the book. I watched the movie. So I don't have that imprint you're talking about. How can they change it? The big things, it has to be supernatural. The little things, freaking Google can change that. They can just erase all of the other residual evidence off the internet. And if you don't have physical residual evidence, you know, were there ever pens that look like this? Well, if you have one of these, then you can go, hey, see, this is residual evidence. And then people say, no, that pen never existed. Well, there's one. Okay, that's residual.
Laura, you asked me who I thought was behind these big Mandela effects, like the continents moving and aeroplanes being changed. Well, who do you think is behind it?
Well, if it's supernatural, it is not a human. And I can't define anybody above that other than the prince of the power of the air, otherwise known as Satan, has powers bigger than ours. Okay. God has powers bigger than ours. The Holy Spirit, which apparently can move here on earth in our realm, obviously has some powers that we don't have. So in order to move a mountain, move land locations, they can explain it any way they want to. They can say it's, the crust shifted and so on, right? I mean, look at what they did with the screw that fell down in the ISS. You know, the guy from Sweden, he's unscrewing the screw on live, on camera, doing one of their ISS showboat things. And he reaches over here and he unscrews the screw, and clatter, clatter, screw drops right to the floor. I mean, making the noise. And he looked down there too. Okay. Now, wait. If we have weightlessness in the ISS, and you guys are always having to hold your feet down underneath those strappy things, and you guys are always, floating water and floating things and microphones around in the place, why didn't that screw, when you unhooked it, just float out? Why did it fall to the ground? Because you know what? That's what you've been calling gravity. That's what we call density. Either way, it didn't float. So what happened? Do you know what they actually say is the reason? Oh, the ISS hit a pocket of gravity. A pocket of gravity. Okay. Now, you know what? I'm done. I'm done listening to anything you have to say. when you try to bullshit me that way. Okay. And anybody else out there who would buy into a pocket of gravity can just kiss my hiney, because you'll listen to any excuse about anything. We're talking to a wall if that's the case. So there you go. The Mandela effect is going to affect certain people that way. There's going to be, like I said, go look up Mandela effect debunked on YouTube and look at the massive amount of videos people have made. And they have millions of views on them. So it isn't any different than, what was it, Vsauce that did the flat earth debunked with a bunch of BS? Millions and tens of hundreds of millions of views probably by now on that video. And he didn't tell you anything that debunked anything at all. Okay. But yet, because it's what you want to believe, that flat earth is BS and it's easily debunked, there you go. There's your handed on a platter with icing on it.
Yeah, and that's the connection with flat earth ultimately, because we got into flat earth, but it wasn't so much what shape the earth was really. What we wanted to know was, where are we? What is the point of being here?
If it's not this, what is it? Exactly.
So now when you're looking at flat earth, it's pointless trying to explain anything when you know it's a construct. So it can be anything it wants to be, and I think the flat earth it's all down to your local observations. We've all got our own subjective view of what it is. The sun is, you and people close to you looking at the sun. Yeah, and somebody else looking at the sun on the other side of the world, they're looking at their own sun. All these suns are not available in the sky at the same time, otherwise it would give the game away. But everybody who looks at the sun or the moon, they're looking at their own personal moon. And they've got the technology so that, all these personal observations are not observable all the time by everybody. So there's always
it's not they have the technology. It's the nature of the construct. It's how the construct works. And if you think about it this way, the minute you started looking into flat earth and you heard Neil deGrasse Tyson say, you can't see because all you ever heard is show us the curve, show us the curve. And Neil deGrasse Tyson says, you'll never see the curve because it's too big and you can't get far enough away from it as a person to see the curve. Okay. Then what is that curve that we see? Because that's our own circle of light. That's the way the earth looks. The higher you get from it, it looks like a 360 circle around you, which is why everybody fell hook, line, and sinker for the pizza pan. But you can't have it both ways. You can't say it's too big to see the curve when we know that you also said it's 25,000 miles in circumference, this ball. That's a definite number. So you trapped yourselves, because now we've got geometry and trigonometry to use to define what should the curvature be if it's the object is 25. So, there's a yin and yang with that whole argument. The problem is y'all are all arguing about what setting on the toaster you want. Y'all want toast. Okay. Y'all want to know where you live, but you like your toast brown and you like yours bare. You're going to settle for this level of flat earth and I'm not. So there's nothing that can make me get off of yours, because you only needed to get far enough away from the globe to define that it was not a globe. So anything that defined that, you're good with. Okay. Don't care more about what it is. Well, Lawrence and I both pursued globe debunking first. That's how you get to flat earth. Then flat earth as a cult dogma. You go through that and you investigate all of the things that, all the flat earthers say, the gurus like, Eric Dubay and Jaron and Vsauce and any of the people who have opinions. Okay. So you go through and at some point you go, it's not that either. Now it's not that, can't be that. So now what is it? So then you go into the next level. It's like climbing the stairs. You know, we're on like the 4th floor now. Okay. And so on the 4th floor is what? Simulation, Mandela, AI, construct, matrix, all these things, because these are all the people who no longer are on the 3rd floor with just regular old flat earth. And once Lawrence and I found Pac-Man, hello, bang, Pac-Man, what is that going to mean now? Okay. If the sun comes in from the east and goes out in the west, and then it comes back in the east in a straight line, we have a problem with your circle. But we also like discover that's supernatural. That's a hyperloop. That's a continuing feedback loop of sky bodies. Okay. So once you discover that, then you have to go, how can that happen? And that leads you over into the book of Enoch, and it leads you over into, you know, I don't know, anything, everything. But look at the people who are still stuck on concave. They went from flat earth. Almost every concaver started out as a flat earther. Flat earth, and they went to concave. Oh yeah, now this makes sense, because this stuff can work if we're on the inside of the ball.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's a simulation, and there's no, you know, a construct. There is no way out. The Pac-Man can't get out of the computer and come out and have and see you. He's stuck in that computer, and we're stuck in this particular construct, which can be changed at any time. We could wake up tomorrow with 3 eyes. And if they changed our code, that's the way it was always been, and we always had 3 eyes. It's as crazy as that, because
well, it'll be kind of like giants. Remember? Yeah. Okay, so people go and find residual of giants. Okay, and they say giants never existed, just giants. Okay, and so you can go, wait, here's the residual evidence. We'll be able to find some 2-eyed thing person down the road, right?
Yeah, there we go. So I put this on Facebook the other week, actually. So this covers 2 points here. So this is time and date, yeah, and the maps. The map, you know, you get different versions of the map, but this is what they're, you know, showing you the sun pattern during the equinox. So I've marked on here points A, B, C, D, E, and F. So let's imagine that there's a man stood at all these points with a compass. You know, so D, E, and F are all going to see on their compass this sun rising at 90 degrees east, and A, B, and C, they're all going to see the sun set at 270 west. Now that's impossible. That can't be made to work on any model. So it's got to be a simulation. And then you look what we've got here. You've got the sun on the left. You know, a third of the Earth lit up here. Dark in the middle, and then all light on the western side. There's no sun model that you can use that will give you that profile of the sun. You know, you'd need
no flat Earth model. No, yeah, you're right.
You know, so that's another evidence that
there's no circle flat Earth model. There's no diamond flat Earth model. There's no model that it's square. Yeah. Doesn't matter. I mean, we went to the diamond. We went to the square. We looked at all of the shapes, and the closest one that worked for what? Where all the land masses were, and all of the distant locations for everything. Okay. That worked on the diamond. Are we taking it back? No, because you know what? John Walicki, thank you. Yeah. Shout out to you. Did that animation mock-up of the diamond with the sun, moon, and stars moving across or whatever. And he showed that the diamond you just kept shifting the diamond, okay, and like flipping it, flipping it, flipping it. Okay, that created time, and it worked. He made it work. So, do we live inside of a pyramid-size construct? A tetrahydrogram, I forget all the terms, hypercube, people can find relative things to every way you can explain it. Think, oh, those Jewish guys wear those little square hypercube looking things on their foreheads when they're praying. Or, the Islamic people, the Muslims, they walk around a black cube. There's black cubes here, black cube. Is it a black cube? There you go. I don't know. There could be some relationship to that shape, but at this point, I can't get bogged down in shape anymore, because that's not pertinent to finding out the whole idea of the construct. That's a bigger thing. That all will figure itself out, right? So, okay. So anyway, we're going to wrap this one up, and we're going to do a part 2 and talk less about the Mandela and the changes and the things that we've noticed, because we've all noticed them all. And we're going to go more into the memory codes and the programming, and how that is different in different people, and how that can make this all work too. And who at what level has the capacity to alter the code in people, in the GMOs and the drones and the whatever, and how much of your own code. These are the things you'll have to ask yourself. How much of your own code is programmed and changed often that you're not even aware of? I mean, we sleep on the average of 6 to 8 hours a night, all of us. I mean, except for the insomniacs, but eventually they have to sleep. So you have no idea what's going on in your programming or your updates or anything when you're sleeping. I mean, that's a whole nother level of consciousness or subconsciousness that's acting upon your brain. And are you getting jacked into the matrix? Oh, now I can fly a plane. Not many of us have the capacity to be able to do that. But at the same time, it's very mysterious to think about when some of these changes happen. You may not notice them for months, years, decades, maybe. And so that's something that I would really like to investigate. And so, Lawrence, what do you want to talk about in the next episode?
I was going to talk about manifesting things, because I've had I found the giant's finger. I thought about it, and 10 minutes later, I picked it up on the beach.
Okay.
I
think that's good. That goes with it.
A couple of days ago, and it really freaked me out. I just couldn't. I thought, no, this isn't happening, and it did. And I'll tell you about it in part 2.
Okay. Well, it's just like the day that you found, or the day we did the episode about you finding the giant fingertip on the beach. I just so happened to almost have cut my fingertip off and had a plaster, as you guys call them, we call them Band-Aids, on the tip of my finger on the same episode, and we didn't plan that. So that was a little woohoo. So we'll be back with episode 2 on this same series next. And for those of you who think we're just going to talk about flat earth from now on, there's a billion other channels for that. We're past just flat earth now. And we understand that we don't just live on some flat pizza disc or some flat 2-dimensional earth or even 3-dimensional earth. We're in a construct, and it can manifest itself as just about anything for anybody. So if it's manifesting to you as a globe, then so be it. That's what it's going to manifest as. If it's manifesting to you as a pizza pie with circling suns and moons and a dome over the top, then that's what it's manifesting as. It's not manifesting to that as that for Lawrence and I anymore, and for quite a few other people. So a lot of people have moved on to this new interesting topic of simulation, and we're heavily investigating that now. There's no reason to change the name Flat Earth Conspiracy, because that's what got us into this. And it was a conspiracy. It was a psyop introduced into the mainstream mentality, and we walked through it, and we came out the other side, and we said bye-bye to that, but it still remains a conspiracy that was created. So we'll be back. We're actually going to be back shortly, but this isn't live. So we're going to be doing part 2, and we'll upload that probably at the same time as part 1. Talk to you in a little bit, Lawrence.
Right, I'm just going to get a coffee now then, Laura.
Okay.